Welcome to Your All You Need podcast. I'm your host, Alicia Carrasco, and today I have the immense honor of having with me two extraordinary guests, Katie and Guy Hendricks. They've been together for over 40 years now, and they are not only pioneers in the fields of relationship transformation and body-mind therapies, but also best-selling authors. They've written together over 40 transformative books, including the New York Times bestseller, Five Wishes, Conscious Loving Ever After, the one that I have over there, and The Big Leap, which I have over here. Now we'll talk about it. And they've also trained thousands of coaches. They have appeared on Oprah and they led seminars worldwide. Their work breaks through the mark of limiting beliefs and opening doors to boundless creativity, intimacy, and also his. And together, they also founded the Foundation for Conscious Living, a platform that promotes conscious living and loving, helping couples and also individuals to foster deeper connections and also personal growth. So welcome to the show, Katie and Guy Hendricks. Thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having us.
So I must say that you guys are the perfect power couple example. So my husband and I, we are entrepreneurs and we are entrepreneurial couple. And because we've been for the past few months, we've been, especially after we read this book, we've been talking about all the things about what we're going to talk in a few minutes. But it's like all the work that you've been doing together as a couple, all the beautiful projects that you're constantly doing, and you don't stop. It's like, oh my God, they are like so creative and so inspiring. And we're like, you know what? When we grow up, we want to be like them. So I just wanted to say that, like, open this interview by saying that, because it's like a true honor having you guys here today.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. Oh.
It's a great pleasure to have kids like you out in the world.
So I want to start, I was mentioning The Big Leap. So I'm a huge fan of this one. I have all my notes here. I have notebooks there written down. Oh my God, I'm so crazy about this one. And I also have this one over to you.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
The new one. I got to hold it upside or right
this
side.
Is, I love this one. And I wanted to show it at the end of the interview. Like, you know what? I bought this one because I know that it's like a few weeks it went out, right? So anyway, it's crazy. This one, The Big Leap, when I read it last year, it was like kind of in the right moment. I don't know how, but I bought it and I started reading it and I was like, oh my God, everything that they are saying here is like written down for me. And I really know what they're talking about. Like all those sabotaging things, like when you like are like having a good time and then you sabotage yourself. And when you are in a couple, is even worse sometimes, right? So when I read this one, I had to share it with my husband, Mark. And we both started like a journey of kind of understanding deeper what is in this book, because it's not only important for like personally, individually to grow, like to get your dreams and to be able to experience more love and be happier, right? But also as a couple, right? And I just wanted to ask you regarding The Big Leap, because there's going to be people in the audience that still don't know about The Big Leap, and just explain a little bit, what is it that The Big Leap is about?
Good. I see our cat is wanting to take a big leap.
Yes, I'll go while you're.
That's okay. I also have cats, and I know that they love coming.
Yes, The Big Leap was the culmination of about 30 or 40 years of work I did, particularly with a lot of successful people and a lot of high-tech folks and things like that. People that, looking at them, they were so brilliant, but they kept messing up in other areas of their life. Like, for example, they would get a big raise at work and then go home that night and have a huge argument with their family. And so I started thinking about this, and I started calling it the upper limit problem. And that is one of the big concepts from The Big Leap. There's two big concepts. One of them is how to begin to get out from under your upper limit problem, your tendency to sabotage yourself when things start going better and better. And so I show people in The Big Leap that there are certain limiting beliefs that are underneath that. Like, for example, a belief that you're fundamentally flawed in some way or not entitled to the good things of life. Another one is people sometimes feel that they can't shine, they can't get up into the light. Other people can do that and they can stand over here in the shadow, but they fear, really letting the light on themselves and shining the light for other people. So the big leap helps you identify and clear up those old limiting beliefs so you have access to the number two thing in the big leap, which is your genius zone. And my discovery is that each of us has inside us a set of unique abilities that allow you to do what you most love to do and what makes your biggest contribution to the world. That's what the big leap is all about, is about how to get out from under your upper limits and occupy your genius zone. And the new book just breaks it down to one day at a time. It's a day at a time book, 366 days of big leaps, little leaps. But yeah, those are the two big things. And we use that. I mean, we've always used those things in our relationship.
Yes, because one of the things I was just thinking of as you were talking about this is that when you get together with somebody else with whom you have a, that recognition and wanting to partner, that you have more energy together than either of you has on your own. And so that tends to create an automatic upper limit problem because you're dealing with much more energy than you probably have before. And then how you navigate that allows you to either keep expanding so that there's room for each of you to express your genius, or you begin to sabotage. And there's some ways that people sabotage in relationship that we found are very common. I think one of the biggest is criticism, blame and criticism. So rather than using the extra energy to look, wow, how am I creating this? And what might I do with my creativity instead of going na, 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 and hassling the other. And so letting your creativity become co-creativity allows so much more expansion for each of you to express yourself. But criticism, and then I think probably also either not making a commitment, a full commitment, or stepping in and out of that commitment with each other.
Yeah, one of the things I point out in the Big Leap is that commitment is one of the most useful superpowers human beings have. But it needs to be a certain kind of commitment. That's why we're known as integrating the mind and the body, because if you make a commitment only in here, in your head, but you don't feel it in your heart, then it's as good as not being committed at all. And we have couples that have come in, they've been married maybe for 20 years, but they've never really made a full commitment to each other. They have affairs or something that takes them out of intimacy with each other, and it's a lot of times they've never made that commitment from the very beginning. They've always had one foot out the back door. So commitment, if you can get your mind and your heart in harmony about what you really want, then you become really unstoppable. And that's what we do our best around here, and certainly in our own marriage. By the way, we just at our 44th anniversary of the day we met.
Oh,
Back
wow.
in 1980.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Oh my God. 44.
Yeah, so we're entering into our 45th year. And as
So
you were
awesome.
speaking, one of the things that occurred to me is I think one of the things we discovered is that commitment gets you into the game. It gets you onto the field. It gets you,
Right.
really interacting with each other. But recommitment is what gets you from where you are to where you want to go. And
Yeah.
recommitting is a powerful and simple act, but people really do almost everything else except recommitting. Like, you go first and then I will. And, I'm still mad at you and I want to be right and I'm not going to recommit. Or we just forget that recommitting is possible because there's so much mythology still about relationship that it's hard work. You have to compromise. And we found in all of these years that compromise has never occurred on the menu. We have never compromised. People are kind of astounded when we say that. I mean, well, what do you do? Well, we tune into what do we each want What do we most deeply want? And how can we support each other to have what we really want, and making the relationship big enough that, like a bigger meadow for us both to roam in, where we can be connected, but also have the freedom to have our own individual evolution. And so that dance has been part of what we really played with over the years.
Another thing we do is we really dedicate our relationship not only to expressing our own individual genius, but also releasing the genius of the relationship. Now, what is this relationship here to do? As we've gone into that more ourselves, well, one of the things we're here to do is teach a kind of a message, and we've taught it around the world, basically. And we found that around the world, no matter whether we're in Bombay or Beverly Hills, everybody's got the same relationship problems. They all have upper limits built into their relationship where they get to a certain level of intimacy and then they start a fight or something happens, somebody gets sick or something like that. And so what we've done is just come up with the alternatives for what would allow you to feel a constant flow of loving, positive energy all the time. And so since we've been at it for 44 years, we've gotten pretty good at it. Nobody around here said a cross to the other in decades. And so you can imagine, if you're not constantly bickering or jockeying for the victim position, blaming the other person, if you're not doing any of that stuff, you have a lot of time and energy to do good stuff in the world.
A lot of free time.
I totally know what you're talking about, because I've been on the other side. Like we've been an entrepreneurial couple for almost 8 years now. We've been together for almost almost 20 years now, because we started in college and all that. And there was a time when, I'm gonna be super honest here, because this is a conversation. Yeah. So there was a time when we were like all this, like you are an entrepreneur and you are like working together and you're like, and it's like the perfect scenario for all the upper limiting things. Now I know they are, I put a name. But till then, it was crazy. There were weeks when we used to fight like twice, 3 times, and it was exhausting. And at some points we were like, why are we doing what we're doing and together? And we are like having these arguments constantly. And then we kind of understood how to navigate that. And it was basically a process of understanding each other better, doing the inner work first individually, and then like coming back together from that point of honesty and being able to, but what you were saying before, like being honest, like talk about what you're feeling, and that kind of intimacy, it's like, for me especially, that I've always felt that I'm not enough. That's my upper limit thing there. I'm not enough. I'm fundamentally flawed, basically. And also I don't want to shine too much because I don't want to be a burden. All those things, right? All of them. But I didn't know that was there. But I was the one, actually, I took full responsibility for those arguments, and he did his part as well. But I was like, taking full responsibility, I know that having those upper limits there is what caused me to be insecure and to kind of fight arguments, like protect me, right? And that was a way to protect, like, I don't want to go deeper. I don't want to say, yes, this is what's happening. I'm afraid that I'm afraid that we're going to blah, whatever. And it was like hard work. And what you're saying about recommitment is like, once you found out, like, okay, this is what's happening. Now I made a commitment, but it's not like it gets you in the game, right, Katie? But what is it that, how do you recommit? Because in our case, we're doing our work and it's been almost, I would say, 6 months now without any arguments. So we're like super like, okay, we kind of found something there and we're working on it. And it's like, when you think back, it's like, oh my God, at that moment, we weren't talking clearly to each other. We communicated, but not in the way that we had to. And I think that's like the main problem, right? In our society in general, is like, you have to wear a mask or something, or you have to play a persona. And it's like, this is who you are. But be careful. Don't say too much, because if not, you're going to get hurt. And it's so bad when you take it to your own relationship, but sometimes it's so subconscious that you don't really know that it's happening. So how do you recommit? What are the things that you can do to recommit?
Well, one thing is to understand that there are really only a few healing moves in the area of relationship. One of them is learning how to speak honestly about what's going on in yourself and learning how to speak honestly in a way that doesn't attack the other person. So learning how to say, I feel scared right now, rather than you're pissing me off.
Yeah.
You know, if you would stop doing that.
If you'd stop doing that, I'd feel, yeah. So beginning to just speak honestly from the heart. The second thing, which is very difficult to learn, is how to take 100% responsibility for things instead of blaming the other person.
That's
Instead
super
of saying,
complicated.
you're ruining my life, to saying, how am I contributing to ruining my life? Rather than being in the victim position, to actually step up and take full agency for who you are inside and say, okay, I see why I created my life this way. Now let me create it a whole other way that fits what I really want to do.
Yeah, taking responsibility, I found, really is reclaiming my creativity. Because if I'm not taking responsibility, I'm unconsciously creating. I'm creating from unexpressed emotions or experiences. And I also wanted to say another word about speaking honestly. A gateway that I have found is, can I describe what I'm experiencing right now? And the word describe has been really important, because most of our speech, I found, when people are arguing with each other, they're speaking with an intent to prove, usually to prove that they're right, rather than an intention to actually describe what's going on to the other. And that act of describing your own experience it's a vulnerable move, and it opens your heart and it, like your soft belly, to the other. And I find that it really creates that weave of connection that you can then follow into what was causing that, because it's almost never the thing that's happening. It's something, that happened in the past that you learn from, that got triggered. And so you can find it. And we've had these wonderful occasions ourselves, but also with clients, where they're able to follow their body experience to, oh, when I was at the dinner table and my parents had this horrendous fight and we couldn't leave and we all froze. And, they're able to find the place where they stopped being able to follow their own feelings and to share their own experience openly. That's a really magical moment when that happens.
Another thing I mentioned, learning how to speak honestly and listen to what the other person is saying honestly, and learning how to take responsibility, not blaming yourself, but just celebrating that you create what happens to you in the world. And the third thing I wanted to mention is how important creativity is, because if both people can make a commitment to opening up to more and more creativity, around here we call that genius, opening up more and more of what you really love to do and what makes a big contribution to people, the more you can do that, the better the relationship is going to work. Because one thing that puts the brake on good energy, the flow of good energy in a relationship, is when one or both people feel creatively unfulfilled. That's like having a big weight dragged behind your car all the time as you drive along through life. Because if you're going through life feeling creatively unfulfilled, it puts a damper on just about everything you do. So we all need to get busy at finding out our genius, what our own creativity is about, but also what is the creativity that this relationship is here to do. Because, like I say, nobody's figured out the ultimate meaning of life, but we can guarantee you it's not to have a bad time. But a lot of people seem to believe that if they're having a good time in life, there's something wrong with that.
Something's wrong.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. That's
Yeah,
so true.
a third element that I think adds to all of this exploration is a focus on appreciation, the power of appreciation, and seeing your partner as an appreciation project rather than an improvement project. a lot of the mythology about relationship is he's a little rough around the edges, but my love is going to smooth him out. I'll be able to kind of make him presentable in public if I just, work on it. And people have a hard time giving that one up because it's so easy. Like, I can see what you're doing wrong,
Yeah.
and I can point that out to you, but actually going, what is that reflecting about me? That's a tough one, but we're also trained. I think part of the upper limit problem is don't think too well of yourself.
Yeah.
Don't be too much, don't, if you shine, other people can't. So that whole not appreciating yourself and not appreciating your partner, making that shift to creating lots of different ways to appreciate yourself and the other opens up, it expands your upper limit, so that you don't keep hitting that ceiling. You can shift into genuine appreciations. And so that's what we use as a ground floor in our relationship, and also when we're working with others.
I love it. I love it. And going back to that, because I think that's the key thing, right? The finding each one of us our genius, our creative essence. And every time that I talk about creating and all that with my friends, maybe I'm like, yeah, I wake up, in my case, I wake up at 4 and I have like my sacred time, which is like for creativity, and I write because I like writing, right? So they're like, yeah, okay. But I don't see how it applies to me because I don't really like writing or creating anything. I think that's there, like the word genius and creativity. I don't know. In general, there's a conception, like, I think it's wrong regarding like it's only for a selected few that can use those talents or whatever. So I would like to go a little bit in depth in that part of what is creativity and how can everyone connect with the creative essence.
Yeah, well, you've touched on something that's really big, which is a lot of people are scared of creativity. They think it's for other people.
Yeah.
And I've had, I don't know how many people say to me, I'm just not a creative person. That drives me crazy when people say that, because, I mean, just think about it for a second. There's 9 million species on this planet, and we're the one that can have a conversation about creativity. We don't know what the dolphins are talking about, but let's assume. but how we got here was by so many millions and billions of acts of creativity over the millions of years. So we're just alive with creativity. What I say is, look underneath whatever beliefs you have about creativity and go back and look at what did you like to play with before you went to school, way back there when you were 3 years old or 4 years old. What were you doing that you would lose yourself in it? And one of your parents would say, it's time for dinner. And you'd say, huh? What? And I remember my daughter just being like that, with artwork, even when she was a little kid. It would always be on the third one. I'd say, Amanda, come in for dinner. Nothing. Amanda, yeah. And then I'd have to go back there and look in the door and see if she'd passed away or something, But she'd be into this art thing so much. And then she'd look up. I'd say, it's dinner time. And she'd, oh, yeah. Okay, thank you. And
that's the same look that I would know when Gay was in Korea. I would come in and he would have that look. I'd come in the middle of, and so I would know, oh, can't be bothered right now because he's in his creative stream.
Yeah. So everybody, it's not going to be writing or painting. For me, I can't stand the idea of getting paint on my hands. And I'm one of those people that washes their hands a lot. Private confession there. So to me, writing is sacred. It's right up there with lovemaking and any kind of great, beautiful thing like that. But for a lot of people, it would be like, they'd contemplate suicide if they sat down and wrote for an hour. But that doesn't make any difference because, like, for example, Katie is a masterful chef. She's never been employed by it, but she loves to cook food. And I've seen you tinker with half a dozen different spices until you got just the effect you were looking for.
Yes.
So it's the way you make a soup. Here's the thing.
Okay.
Creativity is anything that has the capacity to surprise you. You know, where you suddenly say, oh, if I just didn't use tarragon in that soup, how would it taste? She knows I don't like tarragon.
But it looks so.
Tarragon is the evil herb.
We often check when we're at a restaurant, do you use tarragon? They're like, no, tarragon. But I want to piggyback on this, that your creativity comes from what you love to do. And the whole element of time disappearing. And also you get energized by it. So when I'm cooking or when I'm playing with movement, one of the things I love to do is to take a concept like commitment and turn it into a process that people can actually experience commitment by entering into the process. And so that occupies me. Like I'll be taking something and I'll play with it, and I'll start to use it, and then I'll tinker with it. And I love doing that, and I've loved doing that ever since I was little. But it's not like something you'd say, if I went for a job interview and people say, well, what do you do? Well, I say, well, I create processes from concepts. And they go, okay.
Okay, what do you mean? Yeah, exactly.
Most of the jobs we have today would be impossible to explain to our grandparents or great-grandparents what it is. I remember explained to my 92-year-old granddad what a therapist did. And he said, I asked him, when you were a kid, did you ever think about things like self-esteem and everything? And he said, no, I was mostly thinking about the plow that was right in front of me, because he grew up on a farm. But things have changed massively. The requirements of relationship. I mean, if you think in your own lifetime, like when I grew up, it was all about, there were no divorced parents on the block. There was no single parents except for my mother, and her husband had died. In my first grade classroom, I think only 2 or 3 kids out of 20 or 30 kids came from a single parent family. Well, that's so different now. And there are new ways to communicate and things like that weren't available back then. But it boils down to the same thing. Are you being absolutely open-heartedly honest with the other person? And are you listening with an open heart to what the other person is saying? Or are you trapped behind some listening filter, like you're listening to be right, or you're listening to prove the other person wrong, or you're listening to criticize? All of those things that are filters that get established. I had a lot of them before I walked into kindergarten because of what I saw going around me as a kid. The other thing is human beings are always going to be in trouble until they own responsibility. It's pathetic in the political world. You have grown human beings saying the other person is wrong all the time, or,
and blaming people who have absolutely nothing to do with it.
Blaming all the time, instead of saying, okay, I take responsibility for creating such and such a result. That's important in the world, and it's super important in relationships, because until you can do that, you're operating from a victim position. And all relationship arguments are a race to occupy the victim position. Right. One person tries to get into the victim position and blames, and the other person says, no way, you're the one that's to blame. And literally couples in here that have been doing that for 30 years.
Having the same argument.
Basically. And so that's a good thing to notice. Are you improving the quality of your arguments over the years?
They develop and they are the same thing, but you recreate and decorate that little small thing in something big. But it's the same thing underneath. But it's crazy. And listening to you guys, I see that to be able to take responsibility, you have to do that inner work. And I think that in today's society in general, is like, I'm going to look for the answer out there, because the answer is I'm going to buy that thing that maybe makes me feel better, and that way, blah, blah, blah. And then no. And it's like that commitment that you guys are talking about, like taking full responsibility. It's a commitment to yourself and towards your relationships that you have, even with your kids and your family and whatever you're doing, right? And I think it's hard to do. It's a thing that it's hard to do. Wouldn't you agree on that, or what do you think
Well, I
about it?
think we can make it hard
Uh-huh.
by adding lots of things to it. Like if I'm withholding how I'm actually feeling.
Yeah.
If I believe that it's hard and I make it hard, but I think it just takes practice
Yeah.
and the intention to just go ahead and practice. And then if you forget, which everybody does, and you sort of you fall off the wagon, that's where recommitting. So not beating yourself up or beating the other person up is simply recommitting. I say, oh, I got distracted and I totally forgot my commitment. And so I'm willing now to recommit. And also, if you do that using your whole body, so you step in, like you designate a circle of commitment and you step into it. And both of you stand there for a moment and enjoy that connection. The more that you can add your body, the more you're using your whole body wisdom and the wisdom of generations that you carry in all of your cells to assist you. There's one other element that I wanted to mention, I think that is really important to the flow of creativity, and that is honoring the relationship dance of union and individuation. We say that we all have an urge to merge, to experience letting go into another person and feeling that we're not limited by our own skin, and having that sense of being in union with another, which is so ecstatic. But we also have an urge to our own creative individuation and finding the rhythms of that are always different, at different times of life and for different couples. So you can have like a real like Gay's completing a book and he's really on that. And that's where his attention is going. He's more on an individuation track. And so for me to know that, it's not that he's abandoned me, that's what he's bringing to the relationship. And if we let ourselves have that flow, it really creates variety and renewal in the union of your relationship. We've seen many people who think that if they want to have time apart, it means there's something wrong. There's something wrong with me, if there's something wrong with the relationship. And society supports that, with how's your other half and how's your better half. And, is she letting you off the leash tonight? And those, kinds of, disparaging comments that we have about really not honoring that. But when we do, I think that's a really boost to having a healthy, vibrant relationship.
I come from a background, my parents, like my mom, she didn't have time for herself, never, and never reclaimed that because she was like, like playing the perfect role of mom, like for their children, for her husband, and being for everyone but herself. Like she was like the last one, right? And I didn't realize that until last year actually, that I was carrying that into my own marriage and relationship, and that was actually also causing that I'm not enough, and all those things were like related to that kind of role model that I had back when I was a kid, and what I was supposed to be doing as a mom as well. Because when you were saying right now about like this rhythm, this dance between like Mark, he is a film composer, my husband, right? And he has sometimes when a project comes and it's a movie and it's 4 weeks, he has to go deep these 4 weeks of work, right? But there was a time, now I understand that rhythm, and now I know that he is with me, but he's maybe we're on the dinner table and he's thinking about, okay, this blah 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 blah. He's like playing music in his head, right? But there was a time that I didn't understand that, and that kind of, for me, it triggered that sensation of I'm not enough. Yeah, I mean, I don't deserve him, or maybe am I doing something wrong? I was like taking that personally, right? So when you were explaining this, is like I totally know what you're talking about, and I think that a lot of couples have that problem because there's also that when you are, but right now it doesn't happen anymore because when we open up to talk honestly, you kind of know that he loves me. He's just like right now, like creating that piece of art kind of thing, like that music, and he's there, right? And when I'm doing maybe my articles and I'm writing that, I'm there, right? But doesn't mean that we don't love each other. And that is true that when you kind of nourish that part, and you take like you're able, because for me it took me a while to kind of say, hey, I want time for myself and I want time for my writing, and I'm not going to make any money out of it or whatever. I don't care. I just like, I want to do this. And for me it was hard even committing. I had to do, and I still have today to recommit almost every day to, okay, I'm not doing anything wrong, I'm recommitting and I'm writing and I'm taking time for myself, because this is, I mean, that makes me feel fulfilled and happy, and I'm a better version of myself and for my kids and for my partner, right? But it really takes that commitment to yourself, and I think that's an act of self-love, actually.
Oh, definitely, because human beings, like Katie said, go through cycles of wanting to be close to another person and then needing time for individuation. And union, individuation, it's a pulsation, and you need to know where you are in the middle of that pulsation, because couples are not always in synchrony where both of them are growing at the same pace. In fact,
Exactly.
the other way around, one. So the important thing, though, is for both people to make some kind of a commitment to their creativity, to bringing forth their creativity. Because if a person is unfulfilled on creativity, they're going to take it out on the relationship over here. And what we want to see is a world full of people who are really actualizing their own creativity and creating new things for the world, and then relationships creating whole new things for the world. And I know it's not that way most of the places in the world now, but it's got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And it can start with really just 10 minutes a day. So committing to give 10 minutes to your own finding what you most love to do, like right now, what you most love to do, or playing with something creatively, or getting a connection like, oh, I want to go and look that up that I saw yesterday. And, you go off down the track, of chasing down something to put in an article. And that you're getting more creative because you get more enlivened, more available, and more available for interaction. So even just 10 minutes a day will get you going.
That's awesome. So actually, one of my last questions was regarding that. Like, we may have people in the audience listening right now that they are like, still at this point, they're like, well, it may work for them, but it's not going to work for me because this is my reality, blah, blah, blah. And I'm not able to do that because, well, my husband or my wife or whatever, like, we can find excuses, right? So how would you encourage them to make the move and start walking towards their big leap, personally and in the relationship?
I would encourage them to get more friendly with yourself. Don't give yourself such a hard time in life. Give yourself the opportunity to grow a little bit in your genius and your well-being every day. Like in the new book, one of the first, I think the first activity has to do with making a commitment to expanding your genius every day. If the whole world did that, it would be a very different place. So, at some point, you've got to be bold enough to decide that you're worth investing in. And sooner, I hope, rather than later. But at some point, start investing in yourself. Start owning more of your agency in your life, more open-hearted responsibility for yourself.
And I also want people to know about our foundation website, foundationforconsciousliving.org, which has dozens of support videos, how to really come home to loving yourself, how to restore your own resourcefulness, and how to create caring communities. And we have no-cost seminars that people can attend, on a monthly basis about these kinds of topics and learning practical ways to implement them into their lives. So letting yourself be supported too. I think we're such a, in the United States where this kind of, individualism reigns and, by myself and I can handle it. So letting yourself actually be supported by community I think is so important right now, because so many people are experiencing being isolated or lonely, or and still recovering from the pandemic, or grieving over all of the losses that they've experienced. And having community allows us to recognize, oh, I'm not on my own. There are people who can care for me and kind of help jumpstart my caring for myself.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. I was going to ask regarding that information, where can people find you guys? So I think that's actually, I've been using those like Monday sessions with you, Katie.
Oh,
They're
great.
amazing. I attended, I couldn't do it yesterday's, but the last week you were talking about filling your own cup before giving to others. And I'm like,
Yes.
yes, thank you. That's like the recommitment I needed. Like, because I committed to do that. It was like, oh, great reminder. Thank you.
Oh,
So
wonderful. I'm so glad that you have been joining the community. That's wonderful.
yeah, I really love it, and I encourage everyone that is listening, please to do so. I'm gonna leave the link below, so they know where to go. And I don't know, just thank you so much, Katie and Gay Hendricks. It's been amazing, and you are truly an inspiration for all of us who are like just trying to make our big leap and living our lives to the fullest. And I just want to say that I end up this interview with an incredible flow of positivity and love inside me, thanks to you guys. And I don't know, your love and your positivity is contagious. And I've been feeling it during all the interview. And I'm sure that our audience is going to feel it too. So thank you. Thank you so much. And yeah, thank you for all the wisdom and everything that you are doing in the world.
Oh, thank you. Well, back at you.
Thank you so much for being in your genius zone,
All right. Thank
making
you.
a contribution to the world.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye now.